Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Cyber Risk for Community Associations webinar. I'm Sherry Branson. I'm now joined by Kevin Davis from Los Angeles. I'm in Texas, and Kevin is in Los Angeles. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. How you doing, Sherry?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well. Kevin, it's 38 degrees in Texas and raining.
Yeah, be kidding.
No, I wish I was. Yeah, it feels more like Minnesota here. So.
Well, you know what? It's kind of cold in LA, and it's been raining and overcast for like 2 months now. Really, I mean, I haven't seen much sun. Yeah, I would say it's cold here, but cold to us is like 62. So,
Yeah, 38 was a little bit of a surprise.
yeah,
I guess
I bet you it was. Yeah,
everybody's getting a real winter this year, that's for sure. I know you're getting
I
a ton
know.
of rain.
It's too long. We got to get it over with, you know?
Yeah, you'll be getting some California sun pretty soon, and we will too. It's going to get hot here. And Kevin, we have a great webinar. We're doing our second webinar of 2019 this year. We have a big crowd joining us today. Welcome to a lot of new people who are joining us. And today's topic, we haven't done it in a little bit of a while, and we have some exciting new changes to talk about with our cyber policy.
Yeah, you know, it's a cyber update really because associations are easy targets for hackers. And what we're going to do today is talk about what's going on out there for community associations and do you have the right coverage to really handle these types of situations. So we're definitely going to do it. Our goal pretty much is to talk about this new policy we have that's designed to give the kind of protection that community associations truly need today.
Absolutely. And I'm doing something a little bit different today. I'm putting the PowerPoint for our presentation that you see right here, one of the slides. I'm putting it on the toolbar where it says handouts. If you look down in the categories on the toolbar, there's handouts. So you can click on that handout. You can download the PowerPoint so you have access to it. And I did want to mention that I record all of our webinars for people who haven't joined us before. And I put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com, where you can listen to today's webinar again and all of our past webinars as well. And one other thing, there's a question box on the screen. You'll see in that toolbar. You can type in your questions during the webinar as questions pop into your mind, and we'll stop halfway through if there are some questions that have come in. If not, we'll wait to the end and answer all of your questions at the end. So Kevin, what is our goal today?
Yeah. Again, like I said, our goal pretty much is to give you an update on cybercrime, what's going on in it, what's happening, what it is. So looking forward to it. It's going to be pretty good.
Great, fantastic, great. Now, can you tell everybody what exactly is cybercrime anyway?
Sure. When we talk about cybercrime is basically any criminal activity that involves a computer. Okay. The U.S. Department of Justice divides cybercrime into three categories. The first one is crimes in which involve computer as a target. For example, the cybercriminal wants to gain access to association's network or anybody's network.
Okay, so basically they want to steal money, they want to steal funds like assessments, the reserve account, or vendor payments, stuff like that, right, Kevin?
Exactly. So they want to steal the funds or they want to steal personal identifiable information about the people who live in the association, like an individual's name along with social security number or driver's license number or account number.
Yeah. Okay, and that's basically called a data breach.
Exactly, and that's what we're talking about today. So we're talking about, somebody having access. So the first one we talk about by Department of Justice is somebody having access to the system so they can either cause a data breach or actually steal the funds. The second type of crime is using the computer like a weapon, like to launch a denial of service attack.
Okay, I see. So what exactly is a denial of service attack, Kevin?
Okay, now, have you ever tried to get out of town? Get a flight out of town because of bad weather. And right now you have 38 degrees. It's not bad enough. But let's say right now you have a major snowstorm coming. You want to get out, and you call the airline. What's going to happen?
Well, if it's bad weather, it's probably going to be hard to get a flight.
It's going to be hard to even get through, right?
Yes.
And that's basically what we're talking about. A denial of service attack really is an attack meant to shut down a computer system or a network, making it impossible to get access to it. And they do it by flooding a system with as much information as possible to trigger a crash, so the whole system crash. And the goal of it is just to deprive the end user of that service or resource they may need. So if I'm going to get out of town, I can't get to United because somebody did a denial of service attack and I can't get access to it. So either A, I want money, to stop doing it, or B, I'm forcing everybody to use my competitors, JetBlue or American. So that's kind of what denial of service is. And the third one we're talking about is crimes in which a computer itself is used an accessory to a crime for using the computer to store illegal information.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Like we've seen some cases in the news of child pornography. So that's
exactly. So when we talk about cyber crime, those are the three things that really come into play. Now, for us today, we're talking about the first one mostly, which is crimes in which the computer is the target itself.
Okay, so they're targeting the computer itself. So how do these cyber criminals do it, Kevin? How do they pull it off?
All right, we talk about the cyber criminal, and it's kind of interesting. According to former Cisco CEO, right, his name was John Chambers, and he says it, and it's been, everybody uses the same quote. There are basically two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those who don't know it yet, they've been hacked.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So right now, your computer, I'm looking at right now, it's probably been hacked. Your computer's been hacked. Right now, this camera up here is probably looking at, somewhere in China or.
Yeah, we're probably being hacked as we speak.
Exactly. So, but when we're really talking about what information they're looking at, what cyber criminals really target are three areas: the data, the equipment, and the people. Now, when we talk about data, we're talking about they want to steal individuals' personal identifiable information, then use that information to open up a new account, a credit account, basically stealing somebody's identity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I had a friend who had her information stolen, and somebody opened up a car loan in her name, and she didn't find out until she ran her credit report that she'd had a car loan for at least 6 months under her credit. Mm-hmm. So it's happening all the time, and to people that everybody knows.
And this is important because in a community association, when that happens and the board of directors is responsible, they have a duty, a responsibility to do something about it. And the problem is because they lack the experience and everything, they really don't know what to do. Meaning that either they will file a claim, okay, maybe ignore it, okay, or maybe file too soon and create more headaches for themselves. So it's really important for the boards of directors to really understand what's happening in their association. And if there's a data breach, a loss of the data, something has to be done. The second is the attack on equipment. So we had the data itself. Next is the equipment. And with equipment, we had a situation where a property management company in Florida has computer servers stolen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of servers, you don't even think about them. They're in a back closet somewhere. You never look at them, and people don't even realize, they don't think about it every day. They just log on and it works.
Yeah. And it's easy to have somebody walk into your office at the UPS or a janitor or somebody delivering something and saying, oh, yeah, I'm from IT. I'm going to come and check out your computer system. And again, either walk out with it or do something to damage that computer, And again, they want to get access to the information. They want to get access to the data that's stored on that association. And according to the report, what happened is the Homeowner Association Management Company went to work today and found out that the server was missing. They tried to log in from home and they couldn't get anything out of it.
Wow.
So front door was kicked in and boom, the computer was missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kevin, the thing that comes to mind is most large corporations have lots of IT security in place. They have all kinds of systems to protect them, and they still get hacked.
Yeah, and that's it.
Equifax got hacked. Blue Cross Blue Shield got hacked. I mean, hackers know what to look for. They know where the weakest link is to get into a system, and they know how to exploit it. So once they can start information, etc. Mm-hmm. And basically, they can corrupt the entire system. So if they can do it to a large corporation, you can imagine what they can do it to a small business.
Mm-hmm. And which brings up the last one. When you talk about what the weakest link really is, it's the people part of it. The people really is the problem, especially in community associations. Because they really know, first of all, the cyber criminals know how to trick people into giving them that information and to tricking them into giving that information. And the download that's really sensitive to malware or viruses, they know how to do it, especially for community associations.
Absolutely. Yeah, the big problem is the overall lack of cybersecurity and password protection. When one board member leaves and the password isn't changed, that they're not protecting the passwords correctly if they're not changing it all the time, and they're not really training the board members and the managers about how to use it safely, how to use the technology safely.
And on top of it, you think about just the oversight over people handling funds, how weak that is in the community associations.
Yeah, there's really no requirements to be a board member or to be the treasurer who's handling all of the money. All you have to do is show up and volunteer, and now you're the treasurer.
Exactly. And what they do, the treasurer does, is give all the funds away, the reserve account, operating account, to the management company, which should never happen. And they believe that because they do that, they have no exposure.
Absolutely. Great. And now, Kevin, everybody who's with us today is in the community association industry. So why do community associations need cyber? And I did want to mention, I did get a question already regarding our website. Somebody wanted me to repeat it. It's kdisonline.com. kdisonline.com. Okay. So why do associations need cyber, Kevin?
Okay. All right. When we talk about cyber, okay, there are 5 reasons why they need cyber coverage. Okay. The first is because they lost or stolen laptop. It can either be by a board member or the community association manager. When the laptop goes missing and there's personal identifiable information on the laptop, by law, you have to do something about it, by law.
Okay. Yeah, usually when laptops are stolen or they go missing, you just go out and buy a new one. But now because of cyber notification laws in each state, the situation needs to be investigated. And if there's a chance there's a data breach, it must be reported, right, Kevin, by law?
Exactly. And as of March of last year, all 50 states, District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands have legislation requiring private and government entities to notify individuals if a security breach occur. So, number 1, lost stolen laptop. The second reason is an error of omission, a simple mistake by an employee. And in community associations, it can be an employee, it can be a volunteer, it can be a management company employee. For example, if you just select reply all, or just sending information incorrectly to the wrong individual can create a major problem for community associations.
Absolutely. I mean, it could be something as simple as sending the monthly board packets out to the entire complex and not just the board members.
Exactly. Or you can be a match company and send out to everybody in all your associations just by mistake. So mistakes happen, and that's why it's important. Again, these are the reasons why cyber is important for community associations. The third reason is paper files. You see, it's interesting how association board members and managers keep paper files forever. Eventually, these things have to be destroyed. The question is, how is it done? Is it done properly?
Is it done properly? Exactly. I actually know of a situation from a few years ago where a New York co-op had kept their paper files stored in the basement for many years in these large file cabinets. And when they were cleaning out the basement, new board members came in, cleaned out the basement, and put the file cabinets on the sidewalk, and the papers started blowing all over the place. And they weren't, they hadn't been shredded, etc. So social security numbers, etc., was flying all over. So that wasn't a good situation.
Yeah, and that is a data breach. Even though it's not from a computer, it's still a data breach because that personal identifiable information is there and it's available. So now the fourth is a rogue employee, or again, in community association, we talk about volunteers. And because interesting enough, community associations are mostly made up of volunteers.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and they have very little training. They have very little experience managing a condo association. And there's very little oversight for these people that are handling this important data every day. Personal information, social security numbers, account numbers, etc. So you might be dealing with a disgruntled board member, an employee, volunteers, or even unit owners.
And this includes on a management level and at the board level. So it's really important that they understand there's certain things they have to do if they live in community association and they have access to sensitive data.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about the passwords earlier, sloppiness and resetting, creating new passwords all the time, signature cards, lack of proper procedures. They could all lead to cyber theft by past volunteers.
And then the last one we talk about is the vendor. The interesting what happened to us in the vendor is that a landscaper got access to, somebody hacked the landscaper and took all his email addresses. And then what happened is that the hacker sent emails out to all the individuals and said basically, please forward the payment immediately, or we will stop using, or it's late payment, or if you pay money now, you get a discount. So the hackers came out and do it. Again, the key thing to all 5 of these things are that once the individuals are inside the system, they have access to the information, they have access to credit card information, social security number, banking information, email address, client information. Anything out there creates a problem for community associations.
Absolutely, absolutely, great. And now, Kevin, we're going to talk about a data breach study. And this data breach study was done by the Ponemon Institute. And at first, when I saw the name of this institute, I thought Pokemon. You know, is there a Pokemon Institute? But no, it's Ponemon.
Exactly.
So we're going to talk about the 2018 cost of a data breach study by the Ponemon Institute. So can we talk about this a little bit?
Sure. This is really interesting because one of the questions I get asked quite often is how much it costs. What's the cost if there's a data breach? Well, how do you determine who it is? Well, for the past 13 years, the Ponemon Institute has conducted this study. Right now, currently, the cost is $140 per record. That's the cost. Okay?
That's high. And think about it, Kevin. I mean, you've got the current owners, you've got the prior owners, you've got vendors, clients, employees, renters, visitors, etc. I mean, associations are gathering all this information, and exponentially it keeps growing and growing and growing as people sell a unit and new owners come in and they get more vendors, etc. So it just gets higher and higher.
Yeah, and for community association, we're talking about a record, right? So one unit can have maybe 4, 5, or maybe even 7 records. So basically, a 100-unit complex can cost anywhere between $50,000 and $75,000 for 100 units.
Wow, wow.
Okay?
Yeah, so it really adds up quickly. It adds up very quickly. And now, can you get into detail regarding, what are the costs associated with the data breach?
All right, sure. So we know it costs $148 per record. So we're saying it costs $50,000 to $75,000. So what does that cost cover? Okay, these are the things that really are important, that when there's a data breach, this is what happens. The first thing that happens, you have a forensic examination. So you have an examination to really determine if there's a data breach itself, severity of it, and the scope of the breach. The second thing is that the notification. You have to notify all the parties that are involved. And again, most states have enacted laws that says what that notification covers and what's needed, what's not. You have call centers. Companies need to have a call center in there so individuals can call and find out what's happening. Credit or identity monitoring. Extortion expenses if there's a payment that has to be made because you've been locked out of your system. Public relations. How to get your organization back to where it was before. There's costs to identify individual victims. That means is that if you have to buy them an identity theft fraud policy. There's costs to identify financial institutions, so that if the financial institution has to reissue credit cards, there's a cost associated with that. When Target was hacked and then reissue all those credit cards, guess who ended up paying the expense of it? Bank of America doesn't pay it. Target has to pay for all that. So these are all different expenses that you have to pay for. And then finally, the last ones is the fines and penalties. Again, if a company doesn't do the job it should do, it's supposed to do, then it comes back in, and the state can come back in, the Federal Trade Commission can come back in and assess a fine. So when we talk about the cost, how much is that $148 per unit? This is what the calculated costs are. Every time you have a data breach, these are things you have to really be aware of to understand what it's all about.
Absolutely. Okay, that's a lot of categories that they would get expenses in, and it can really add up quickly. And now, Kevin, a lot of people are probably wondering, a lot of associations turn all their information and their data over to their manager, to the property manager. So why would they need a cyber policy when the management company is responsible for the data?
Okay. It's interesting because I'm looking at some of the questions coming in, and this is why one of the questions are coming in. Okay. The biggest question I ask is this. Community association board members believe that they turn over all the data, assessment collection to the management company, they are no longer responsible. This is not true because the person who owns the data may not be the same person who's responsible for it. So you have the community association, understand, the community association is their data. They are ultimately responsible for it. So the management company system is hacked, or another third party, the accountant is hacked, or the landscaper is hacked, or any other third party is hacked, the community association still has a legal obligation to notify the breach to the unit owners and any regulators by law. And one more thing, don't forget too, that the management companies out there are also agents of the association. They have a very, very tight indemnification agreement so that usually if there's any kind of loss, any time of claim against the management company, the unit owners, the board has to indemnify them also. So the best thing you can do is that if there is a cyber-related attack on an association, instead of blaming the management company or going back and forth, what you have to do is work together to solve the problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. And Kevin, as you mentioned, we did get a lot of questions that came in. So I'm going to go to a couple of the questions right now. Okay. Merrick Morris would like to know, do you need cyber coverage if you have computer crime coverage on your fidelity bond? Okay.
Very good question. Today we will talk about the cyber claims. Okay. Cyber can be divided up into two parts. You can have the data breach part of it, the liability part of it, which we will talk about, but there's also the theft of funds, which is all covered under crime policy, which we will do a theft of funds crime webinar in the next couple of months, either May or probably May or June. So you have to separate crime from the other cyber, and we'll get into it in a little bit while, so I hope I answered your question talking about the different coverages.
Absolutely. Okay. And Merrick has one other question that actually just relates to what we just spoke about regarding the manager. He would like to know, is the management company covered as additional insured on a cyber policy?
Yes. And what we've done here, because we recognize that if there's going to be a claim, and the management company is the one that loses the laptop, the first thing that's going to happen is that, does he have coverage? Can he handle the situation? Do they have the proper background and knowledge to handle it? So what we're saying is that we'll provide coverage for both the management company and the board, because again, the board has the ultimate responsibility.
Okay, great. And one more question, Kevin. Lori Ryder would like to know, and Lori, hi Lori, I used to email with you all the time. Could you address associations that use a third-party vendor for online dues payments?
Yes, again, it's the same thing, is that if a third party gets hacked, okay, the third party should say, we have coverage, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. The association should go back and make sure that that third party has it, but if they don't have it, the board of directors or the condominium is ultimately one responsible for it.
Okay. Great. And I did want to mention we have the question box. We'll be doing more answers to your questions at the end, a Q&A. So please type your questions into the question box. And if you'd like the handout, which is the PowerPoint that we're using today, please click on the PowerPoint link, the handouts link, and you'll get our PowerPoint. Great. Now, Kevin, let's get into the policy a little bit, the new cyber insurance policy. We have some new features to it. We have some new insuring agreements. So can you talk about that a little bit? And it's effective April 1st.
It's effective April the 1st. And basically what it is that the new policy is a little bit more easy to understand, because if you look at the insurance agreements of the old policy, it was very complicated and hard to really understand. So what we've done here is we address the exposures differently. What we did, we said, okay, there's liability insurance agreements, there's breach response agreements, which is first party, and then there's cyber crime. Now, today we're going to talk about just the first two only. Again, we need a separate cyber crime webinar to do that, because again, we don't want to overload with too much information. So let's start with the liability insurance agreements. When we talk about the liability insurance agreements, we're talking about two. We're talking about privacy and security, regulatory proceedings. Again, what we've done is we made the language a lot simpler. Now, when you talk about liability for cyber policies, we do not provide media liability at this time. Now, if you do need it, we can talk about it, but right now, because we believe right now that if you want it, it's covered under other policies. So we decided not to cover it because the two main important ones are privacy and security and regulatory proceedings. The reason why they're so important is that the privacy security is pretty simple. You are being sued for the failure to prevent unauthorized access to data. You didn't do your job properly, the data is gone, and as a result, I have identity theft issues. So basically, it's a defense cost when you are sued.
Okay. And we had a situation, Kevin, a few years ago where a property manager left a laptop in their car. The laptop was stolen, and basically the homeowners filed a lawsuit against the HOA and the property manager for their failure to prevent unauthorized access to the data.
An important thing about that situation is that the laptop itself was not password protected. I mean, the person's opened it up, the data was right there. So again, when you have situations like that, it's easier to hold somebody responsible. It's easier to file a lawsuit. So again, when we talk about privacy security, you didn't do your job properly, created an unauthorized access, we're suing. And with regulatory fines and penalties, we're talking about fines and penalties imposed by government due to the data breach being handled incorrectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like failing to notify the Attorney General's office, for example. If you don't notify the Attorney General's office, then fines can be imposed.
Yeah, and we had a situation that when I first started doing the cyber, it was a company that specialized in consumer information. It had a major data breach of lost over 100,000 Social Security numbers. So the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, launched an investigation against that group for alleging unfair and deceptive trade practices. The FTC came in. The FTC found that the company did not have basic security measures in place at the time of the breach. Even though they advertised they had a very sophisticated information security system and practices, they didn't live up to it. So the FTC came in, fined them $500,000, and required them to implement a comprehensive written information security program that was subject to audit for 10 years.
Wow. Okay, that's incredible. Yeah.
So when I talk about the regulatory proceedings, it's really important to understand these are fines and penalties that we are covering. Most liability policies do not respond to fines and penalties at all. There's no coverage for fines and penalties. You can't do it. So from a liability point of view, from a cyber, we pick up the lawsuit itself. And if you don't do a good job, the fines and penalties that the Federal Trade Commission may come out with, or the State Attorney General's office.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so that's a great feature of this policy.
Mm-hmm.
And now, Kevin, let's talk about the breach response insuring agreements.
Yeah, again, we made it simple. What we did, we call it now breach response insuring agreements. Okay, it's all the things. It basically pretty much were the 8 or 9 things we talked about earlier. We talked about the breach notification expense, meaning the cost of printing, delivering notice, providing credit monitoring, call centers, the cost of purchase of identity fraud policy necessary.
Credit identity monitoring for up to 24 months.
Exactly, yeah. Those are things we're talking about. Then we have also computer and legal expert costs, okay? Legal expert costs, meaning that you have to come in and conduct that forensic analysis to determine if there even was a breach or not. And then you have to determine whose fault it was, what was stolen, and just to stop any current breach in progress. So you got that. And then you have this new cyber extortion costs, which is the amount of money paid to ransom, the amount of money paid to mitigate ransom, and which we'll talk about a little bit more. And then we also have restoration costs. So there's a lot of different things that we're covering that we did not cover before. And also, too, we have the public relations that we always did cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an example of that public relations would be you have to hire a public relations firm to restore confidence in an HOA and a property management and to mitigate negative publicity that might happen because of the breach.
Exactly. So, so let's talk about the extortion coverage, because that's the one that's really, to me, it's the biggest exposure that we face. And the biggest thing we're talking about today is including to include this kind of coverage. It's really, really important to understand that what we're doing right now is e-extortion coverage is this new thing that cyber criminals are using, where they use actually ransomware to take money from these businesses.
Uh-huh. And an example of the ransomware is, I know few years back, a hospital in Los Angeles was the victim of a ransomware attack where basically they froze all the patient's records and the computers at the hospital with the ransomware and wanted the hospital to pay Bitcoins to get their information unfrozen and to get the patient's records back. And the hospital had to do it because there was no way for them to recreate records for all of their patients. So they paid the ransom, Kevin.
Yeah. One of the biggest ransomware that happened recently, this is 2017, was the WannaCry ransomware. This is a WannaCry ransomware attack that happened. And this is a copy of it. This is exactly what it opened up. Can you imagine open up your computer and seeing this, where you have 2 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, 56 seconds to get the information to you, or else everything will be lost. Everything will be gone. This ransomware, right? It's called WannaCry ransomware. It was a worldwide attack. It impacted 200,000 computers across 150 countries, with total damages of hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars. And basically it worked by targeting the Microsoft Windows operating system. So because of a glitch in their operating system that if you didn't fix, you would fall for this ransomware. Then what they did, they encrypted all the data and demand ransom payments, or else you would lose all the data itself.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's impacted everything in 2017. And again, if you have not updated your system, you still could be liable for the same situation today. WannaCry is still there. So make sure you update your system. When it says please update, update it.
Yeah,
okay?
Download the patch. If there's a
download the patch. Exactly. So we talk about the new coverage. Basically what we're talking about is we will pay monies paid to meet the extortion demands. The cost of hiring computer service experts to prevent further extortion attempts, and the charges to hire a professional to deal and negotiate with the cyber criminals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. And Kevin, we've received more questions, so we're going to get into another section of our Q&A. Let's see. Doreen would like to know, what is the rating basis?
Oh, okay. The rating is pretty simple. It's a $5 million, based on $5 million revenue. So if you have less than $5 million revenues, you're talking about for a $100,000 limit, the average premium is less than $500.
Okay. So
it's not based on a number of units. It's not based on amenities. It's based on one simple thing, the revenue. So the larger association has over $5 million in revenues, it's going to be a lot more complicated. But anything under $5 million of revenues, you're talking about around, $500, less than $500.
Okay, so it's based on revenue, everybody. And Kevin, I have a question here. Are prior acts provided?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting because when you buy a cyber policy, historically, prior acts were excluded because, again, cyber policies are written on a claims-made basis. And the problem with the claims made on a cyber is that if you buy a policy in January and now is February, you find out there's a loss. But the loss started a year ago, there may or may not be coverage. So on our new cyber policy, we are providing prior acts coverage. You have to make sure you have prior acts coverage because that was a debate we had internally, is that we don't know when the actual act occurred. And it may have occurred prior to the effective date. Again, these are things that are effective April 1st, so in our new policy.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And Kevin, now speaking of the new policy, and how complicated is this cyber application to get a quote?
Well, okay. The application, most cyber apps are really, really complicated. We ask maybe 4 basic questions, okay? And hopefully all these answers are yes, they do. We're in pretty good shape. The first question is about creating and updating passwords. Associations should have a formal procedure in place that update passwords, have a really strong password containing some alphanumeric, and make sure they update the password. But the one thing is that we got to make sure, because again, people come and they leave, and when they leave, they still have the same passwords. So the next two questions are have to do verification of use of firewall and antivirus software. If they do that, they say yes, then they're in pretty good shape.
Absolutely. And here's an interesting question that's come in. Can the management company complete the application?
The answer is really based on the contract the management company has with the association. If in the contract they have that authority, then yes, they can do it.
Okay, great. And do we have time for one more, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. Craig would like to know, is the new form available in all states?
The new form is available in all states. Should be available in all states. It's a good question. It should be available in all states. Yes, I would say yes.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Thank you for a great webinar. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As I mentioned, I have our PowerPoint for today's presentation in the handout section. I record all of our webinars and I put them on kdisonline.com. My email address, if you have any additional questions, if you think of something later on, is sbranson, BRANSON, at kdins.com. Sorry, sbranson at kdins.com. So please send me an email. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, everybody. And please join us in March, on March 28th, as we talk about the top 5 reasons associations need an umbrella.
Yes, exactly. Look forward to it.
Yes, have a great afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Take care.